Hi, everybody. Thanks so much for joining. I do see a few folks still coming in from the waiting room. I know we're right at the top of the hour here, so we do want to get started, and we may have people periodically joining us and coming in through the next few minutes. So thanks for logging on today to talk about loneliness and disconnection in the workplace, and why peer support belongs in your mental health strategy. We're going to start with just a few introductions. So I'm Anna Miners. I'm the Vice President of Customer Success at Canopy, and I'm joined by Dr. Ben Locke and Nicole Masura from Together All. I'll let the both of you just briefly say hi and introduce yourself if you wouldn't mind.
Hi, everybody. I guess I'll go next since I'm next in line here. My name is Ben Locke. I'm Chief Clinical Officer with Together All, and I'm a licensed psychologist living in central Pennsylvania. And I've been working in the mental health field since about 1995 in all different kinds of settings. And I've been with Together All for about 3 years, overseeing our global clinical team that provides the back-end clinical moderation for the peer support platform that you get to see today. Good to be with you. Nicole?
Yeah. So good morning, good afternoon, depending on where you're zooming in from. My name is Nicole Masura, and I lead our partnerships work here at Together All. I'm based in Toronto, Ontario, Canada, so you might detect a bit of a funny accent. I joined Together All about 5 years ago, prior to which I spent nearly a decade at a global EAP provider. So I've spent the vast majority of my career in the employer kind of mental health space. A little bit about me, I always like to share. I got really interested in the notion of peer-to-peer community for a couple different reasons, but largely driven by my daughter. So I've got 2 girls. My youngest was born with a rare genetic disorder and had a really tough couple of early years in and out of Children's Hospital, and myself really found a lifeline, if I'm honest, connecting with other parents in an online peer support platform. So when the opportunity to work for Together All presented itself, I immediately connected with the mission and the mandate, and I've been here ever since.
Thanks, Nicole. Thanks, Ben. I really appreciate you being with us today. Before we dive into the content, I did just want to do a couple of housekeeping items. So we are recording. We will be sending a follow-up after our time together today with a copy of that. We'll be sending a copy of the slides. So I know that sometimes it's hard to keep full attention for the full time and that kind of thing, or maybe you want to share with someone else in your organization. So we'll be sending a follow-up with the slides and the recording, plus some additional Canopy and Together All resources. We do have time at the end for questions. You're welcome to enter questions in the chat throughout as they come to mind. We'll try to get to them if we can, during that period, but we will have some designated time.
My son is questions. I need to come grab him.
Let's see here. We have somebody not on mute. The joys of Zooming, I think. Okay, thank you. We have some technical support on the back end that's helping us out. Appreciate that. We will be sending a survey after the webinar today. Just always appreciate any input or feedback folks have. And although many of our Canopy customers have elected the Together All benefit, some of you, maybe this is the first time you're seeing or hearing information about Together All and the Canopy Together All relationship. So if you're not sure if it's part of your benefit today, consult with your benefits team or your customer success manager here at Canopy, and we're happy to kind of help walk you through that. So our agenda for today, we're going to do just a brief high-level overview. I know many of you are very familiar with Canopy. So just an overview of who Canopy is, but why we have chosen to work with Together All, why they're a great partner for us in supporting our members and our organizations that we work with. Nicole will be spending some time talking about who Together All is, loneliness, the loneliness epidemic, how isolation and connection and community has been a real challenge for a lot of folks, and how a safe, scalable peer support community available through Together All's clinical framework really can be impactful. And Dr. Ben Locke will be sharing results from a study that Together All partnered with Listen. It's an objective third-party evaluation of
I do.
why does this work? You know, what empirical support do we have for peer support? And then we'll follow that up with some Q&A. Again, you know, most of you are very familiar with who Canopy is, but we provide innovative, you know, holistic, human-centered support and resources. We serve just over a million members globally, really through discerning employers and health plans. And at the core of what we do, it's breaking down barriers. We want to help people create happier and healthier futures. And one part of that is reducing, like I said, barriers and increasing access. So most of you probably are aware, you know, that we have the 24/7 crisis support, that we have in-person and virtual counseling appointments. We have digital solutions for cognitive behavioral therapy, you know, and work-life resources. We have all this, but we were missing a component around peer support, which is how Together All has really come alongside with us and focusing on innovative ways we can improve access and we can support community and we can support meaningful connections. And just like quickly, I guess some of the key components of when there's a lot of options around peer support, but when we looked at what would be most meaningful for our members and for Canopy, we really wanted to think about some key areas. And one of those is providing right level of care. So like the right resources at the right time, whether that be somebody that's experiencing an acute need, or as Nicole, thank you for sharing, you know, a specific period of time where support is really needed, to that building the ongoing connection and kind of that ongoing support. And we saw the value in providing like an anonymous, accessible, all around the clock resource. But also really another piece of that that's been really important for us at Canopy and working with Together All is a resource that provides clinical rigor. And both Nicole and Ben are going to talk about that today. But in addition to being accessible, we always have the safety and well-being of our community as a top priority, and making sure that there is safe and secure spaces that have a clinical moderation or a clinical integration component that's really supporting people, and that level of oversight really is crucial to the integrity of the support. And then the last thing I'll say about kind of a key reason we have decided to work with Together All as a partner is the community that Together All provides is really aligned with our goals for DEIB. That it is a space where people can connect with others who have shared lived experience. So whether that be parents or a particular occupational group, healthcare, public safety, maybe it's connecting with other people that are part of the LGBTQ plus community, but providing a space where people find inclusion and belonging, and really supporting that community element. So those pieces, I think, Nicole, you're going to talk about loneliness and isolation and, you know, and the relationship between that and community. So I'll kind of turn it over to you for our next slide here.
Great. Thanks so much, Anna. So as Anna shared, I will be sharing a little bit more around who and what Together All is. Essentially provide what it says here, a clinically moderated peer-to-peer support community. It's challenging to just talk about an online peer-to-peer support community. So in a few moments, what we'll do is we'll actually give you a bit of a tour of the community itself, so you'll get it. But before which, I want to talk a little bit around the growing need for and demand for social connection and peer community, which has really become pretty clear, particularly over the last couple of years of the post-pandemic kind of era. So loneliness has absolutely emerged as a major public health issue. You know, this was the case, public officials would say, pre-pandemic, but again, I think the experience of COVID-19 really elevated this into the mainstream kind of conversations. A couple of major things have happened over the past 18 months or so that I think would speak to the acuteness of loneliness as a major health issue. The first of which was the Surgeon General, Dr. Vivek Murthy's, released a Surgeon General advisory on what he calls the loneliness epidemic, really calling for public health officials, government, employers, colleges and universities to come together to look to really address the issue. And that soon followed a few months later in November 2023 with the World Health Organization launching their first kind of commission on loneliness, acknowledging that this is a global issue. Loneliness is a global issue. And even in the most recent sort of Surgeon General advisory issued last month, which was really calling attention to declining mental health among American parents, Dr. Murthy really calls out as loneliness and a lack of community and connection as aiding to this growing kind of issue for poor parental mental health. So I think it's pretty undisputed at this point that it's a clear issue. I think what's also become very clear is that there is high demand for online support kind of communities. And this statistics on the right-hand side are that, millions and even billions of individuals are going to spaces online, Reddit, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, I'm sure others, to find sort of connection with people who are going through similar things around their mental health. And kind of, like it or not, right? This is kind of happening. And I think this also points to it's in everyone's best interest then for safe online communities to be part of a solid kind of mental health strategy and a mental health service continuum. So if we look a little bit more then at Together All, who are we and what role do we play in kind of this growing concern, as well as sort of growing demand. So what we provide is really a safe space for people to come online and, as Anna shared, really connect with others who are going through kind of shared lived experiences so that they know that they're not the only ones going through it. And they feel less lonely and they get hope that they can kind of come out the other side. It is a safe community because it is monitored and moderated 24/7 by licensed clinicians. So Ben is going to spend some details sort of going through the clinical rigor in which the community is monitored. But essentially, our clinicians are there to really quickly identify, folks that potentially need kind of greater levels of support outside of the community and get them connected to the Canopy EAP or in the moment sort of support from Canopy or other services appropriate to the situation. For our members, so that's our nickname for our users, it is an anonymous experience. So the clinical team, they know who they are, but for a user, they're connecting with anonymous kind of strangers within the community. And that unique kind of combination of being both anonymous and a no pressure kind of peer space has really been successful in attracting and engaging individuals and populations who, for a variety of reasons, aren't typically reaching out for kind of one-to-one care. So as Anna said, it's around really increasing the net, so to speak, of access so that every employee has a means of accessing and receiving support that kind of, meets with their kind of preferences and where they're at. Our story is a bit interesting. We've actually been at this for a number of years, 17 in fact, with really our growth, I would say, over the last 5 years as this issue of loneliness has sort of come to the forefront. Back in 2007, 2008, a couple of things happened. So the smartphone was introduced. And the second was that this little thing called Facebook just started to take off. And our founder, who was a clinician herself, was like, gosh, people want to go to this thing and like talk about their breakfast and their kids' sports games and everything kind of in between. Wouldn't it be great if we could harness the same essence, the same concept, but just do so in a safe means and do so for mental health. And that's really where the idea of Together All was born. And with some National Health Service in the UK grant funding, we've just sort of grown. And so today, fast forward, we partner with 400 organizational partners, which includes employers across every industry, every kind of shape, every size. And we've created a really what we call vibrant space. So communities are only so good as there's enough people in the community to relate to and to sort of give and receive support around shared experiences. And that's the case. So we have, access to 20 million people worldwide and about 10,000 new members joining our community on every month. So the net of that is kind of regardless of the issue that someone's going through, the time of day, there are always other people within the community who they can find support with. So I'll show you very, very quickly in a little bit more detail. There's some screen size to show you what it looks like, but I'll actually do one better and share my screen here. Alrighty. So I have signed into the Together All community with my anonymous nickname. So it says Peanut Butter Pie here. So again, I always appear to other members within the community as Peanut Butter Pie. When I register for the service, a couple of different pieces of information are collected. So we know the kind of pathway that somebody joins our global community, identifying that they're a ABC company employee, that they're part of the Canopy EAP and they have access to Canopy services. I enter an anonymous username, my email address, my phone number, my zip code, agree to our terms and conditions. I get an email authenticating I'm an actual human. And then I'm asking some questions around demographics, my employee status, i.e. part-time, full-time, retired, gender, some risk and crisis questions, but takes a couple of minutes and I get access to the global community, which comes into this space called community. And there are a number of different ways in which people can find other people who are going through kind of similar issues or experiencing similar things. You can see here a couple hours ago, Chili Seaweed 39, we get some funny names, has tagged their post around anxiety and stress a couple hours ago. Trusting Pearly 08 has tagged their post depression, loneliness, stress, student experience. So one way that as a user I can find others kind of going through similar issues is these tags. So if I tick off, our most popular on the left-hand side, anxiety, and then really a fulsome kind of list of categories on the right-hand side. If I tick off addiction, all of the posts pertaining to these issues, with the most recent is going to come to the top. The other way that people can kind of find other people kind of quote unquote like them, as Anna mentioned, around the opportunity to connect with people, who are in a shared role. So whether that be something like being a student, whether that being a parent or a caregiver or an active military or veteran kind of member, or connecting with others in their profession, giving healthcare workers an opportunity to connect around compassion fatigue and burnout and global staff shortages and all those fun things that occur when you're a healthcare worker. I'll show you a very quick example. One of the things that's worth noting is that while it is a peer-to-peer community, at any time, any of the users can chat with a member of Ben's clinical team. We call our frontline staff wall guides, so I can do so by connecting with them in the chat kind of function here. One quick example to show you, just to sort of see a number of dynamics that occur within the community. So this is from a member, Orange Sheep 1. They've tagged their post general chat and depression, and they've written how to deal with grief. My dad passed away in July from cancer. It was slow but sudden. He just went into the hospital, and within the span of 10 days, he passed away. I've cried every day since, and I find it hard to get through the days. I just want him to be here. I feel like everything has disappeared since he's been gone. I spoke to my dad nearly every day about everything and nothing. Everything I do on a daily basis reminds me of him, and it makes me cry. I just feel lost. So this is grief, right? I assume everyone here in one way, shape, or form can kind of connect to what Orange Sheep is going through. They're not asking for anything in particular. They're just getting that experience of grief kind of off their chest. So, and Ben will talk to this in a minute, but there'll basically be a flag on the back end for our clinical team to say, hey, this is Orange Sheep's first time sharing within the community. So our clinical team wants to jump in and to make people feel warm and welcome and included within the space. So our clinician says, "Hi, Orange Sheep 1. We wanted to stop by and say welcome. Having noticed this is your first post here at Together All, we hope that you find the space here to be a supportive one in your journey." And then our clinicians always kind of call out to other people. You know, we can hear this was a huge loss for you. Our hearts go out to you. We hope that others will be by to offer their support to you. Thinking of you, Wall Guide. And then this is where kind of the power of the community comes in. So we've got Caper Girl 88 that says, "Orange Sheep 1, that sounds so difficult. I hear how much you love him. I feel he's still with you, just in a more spiritual way. Let his desire for you to be happy give you strength to heal. It's still early. Give yourself some time to grieve. Keep talking to people," right? So good, empathetic, supportive advice. Pen Crayon says, "Hello, sorry for your loss. I too lost my dad a few weeks ago. I had the same feelings you have. My dad was my rock and best friend, and it makes me feel lost. Do you have anyone you can talk to about how you feel? Maybe a family member or friend. Talking really does help." They also go on to say, you know, Together All really has some good questionnaires you can work through regarding grief, and it'll give you a good idea of how you're coping right now. Another member comes in, and then Orange Sheep kind of comes back into the community and shares the following. "You know, it's still really tough, and I do speak to my family, my fiance, and my best friend, who are amazing to speak to, but sometimes I still feel very alone. And I feel like I'm just saying the same things over and over, or just saying I feel sad when they ask me how I am. It's like a numbness, sadness that's a constant. I find it easier to speak to people I don't know, and I don't know why. I think it's because I don't want to burden people in my life with my sadness." And I think Orange Sheep has been very articulate in sharing kind of what Together All is for people. It's easier to open up to share one's feelings with kind of complete strangers in this space than sometimes it is to connect with their family or friends. And then Orange Sheep kind of goes on, you know, it says they are moving forward, and, you know, their heart breaks for those who have lost someone. You know, thanks for being so caring. The world needs more people like you. So not, you know, not all of our posts are like this, but shows a couple of different, you know, interactions within the community. And if we go back just to looking at some data around Together All and the experience. Perfect. Thanks, Anna. So as I shared, the unique kind of combination of it being anonymous and being a peer-to-peer space has really meant for employers expanding kind of access, right, to individuals and groups of employees, many of whom are not connecting kind of to other levels of support. And this sort of plays out in the following. So when we look across our kind of book of business, again, sort of there being on average about 10,000 new members, so tens of thousands of active members on any given month within the space. 48% of our members say we're it, right? They're not connected to a counselor. They're not connected to other kind of forms of professional support. So really being able to tap in and reach groups of employees, you know, who aren't connected to the EAP. Anna sort of spoke around our community being able to align with DEI and B kind of strategies and mandates. 46% of our membership identify as Black, Indigenous, or a person of color. We know BIPOC populations face heightened levels of personal stigma and are often underserved by mental health services. So this is a considerable percentage of our membership who do identify as BIPOC. I often get asked at the risk level of individuals who are using Together All. It's a space really meant for everyone. So we've got folks who actually report good mental health and are coming in and supporting others as a means of kind of maintaining kind of good mental health, kind of giving back, all the way to folks. We ask some screening questions around risk in the registration process. About 20% of our membership say they've considered suicide sort of in the recent past. So certainly a good chunk of our membership are dealing with a heightened risk level. And then does it work? So we do kind of ask questions to our membership, self-reported questions, and overwhelmingly, 81% of our membership say Together All has been helpful to their well-being. The other 19%, we are very much not for everyone. We have lots of people who start out here and are like, oh no, I need more, or I need different. And that's actually part of Ben's team, our clinical team's role, is to help kind of get people connected to the right place at the right time. So I'll turn it over to Ben to dive a little bit more deeper into our kind of clinical framework and then some of the results from a recent study from a sort of unbiased third party around our service.
Great, thanks, Nicole. And hi again, everybody. Thank you for sticking with us in this webinar this afternoon. I know it can be tough to pay attention to just talking heads. We can go on to the next slide. So I'm going to talk about two things in general terms, and we have more information if you want it. We don't want to overload you with too many details here. I'm going to talk about the sort of clinical structure of how Together All works behind the scenes, and then I'm going to present you with a little bit of research that we recently did examining the therapeutic ingredients in the community to give you a sense of those two pieces behind the scenes. So this document, this clinical framework document, is something that we have available and we can make available to you. It essentially describes a lot of the details of how the clinical team works behind the scenes. Just for a bit of background, prior to joining Together All, I had either provided service, direct care services, supervision, or administration, or large-scale administration of one-to-one clinical services. And it became really clear to me over the last 5 years or so that I was in that space that the demand supply issue just was not going away, but also that we needed a sort of a next wave of mental health supports that could truly support populations of people instead of funneling them through specialized services. So I joined to help build that next wave of services and build something that's scalable to a population, but which also still retains the benefits of licensed mental health providers, which I think is really important. There just aren't enough of them. So how do we take the real key benefits that those folks provide and make them available to a population? So just briefly, in terms of our clinical framework, we provide 24/7, 365 oversight of the entire platform. So any content created by any member on our platform is being reviewed by the technology in the system, brought forward to my team to review and then action if needed. Just to give you a sense, our minimum number of staff on duty at any 1 minute of any day is typically going to be around 5. And it can go quite a bit higher than that when times are really busy. We don't do any kind of passive signposting. If we're concerned about somebody, we're very actively involved. And we have three layers of clinical staff on duty. That includes our wall guides that Nicole mentioned before. They are interacting with the community anonymously, so they can't see the identities of members or the information that we have about them. And they are there to shape, to support, to moderate. That can be everything from helping a member in a direct message exchange, checking in with a member who, let's say, has created a journal entry with something concerning in it that is flagged for them. That could be editing a post or helping a member edit a post so that if it's on a difficult topic, we want them to have it in the community, but it needs to stay within guidelines. So they could be doing any and all of those things. Then we have kind of like a shift manager, a lead wall guide, very experienced team. A number of them have been on staff for more than a decade. And so they're there to consult and coordinate on the response and strategy for a given member. And then we have our senior clinical team, who I think of as intensive off-platform case managers. So in terms of the community, about 60% of members who join the community get what they need without triggering any kind of clinical review whatsoever. About 40% of members will generate some kind of content somewhere on the platform that triggers review by clinical. Most of it is dismissed or reviewed and allowed to pass. And then less than 1% of members on the platform go through what we call an escalation. So the wall guide will bump them to the lead wall guide. The lead wall guide will bump them to the senior clinician. And that triggers for us this concept of duty of care, which is a core element to any mental health license out there. And essentially what that means is we're going to hold on to that member in their distress or their risk until we have confirmed a handoff to the next level of services for them. That can happen as quickly as 20 minutes, or it could extend for a week if we're coping with a complex case of domestic violence and minors in the home and things like that. We take it very seriously, very carefully, try to navigate state and provincial laws. Well, we don't try, we do, and it's a complex web of different laws and regulations each time. So that's kind of the clinical framework in a nutshell. It is a very rigorous system behind the scenes, and again, everybody who's engaging there is licensed in what they do, and we employ a very active consultation, collaboration, and model in the course of safeguarding our members. I'll just pause here just for a moment, just in case there are any questions about the clinical framework in particular. And if not, we'll go ahead and move on to a little bit of research.
I don't see any in the chat just yet, but if folks have something that they'd like to ask about the clinical framework in particular, please do feel free to place it there. Then something that I've appreciated about your team is the integration with the Canopy services as well. So in addition to the layers that you've described for clinical oversight and intervention, although Together All is not a crisis intervention platform, certainly there are people using peer support that are in crisis, and how you've really worked with your clinical team and our clinical team to make sure that Canopy members have that wraparound support with all the different layers and elements of making sure people get the care that they need when they need it.
That's exactly right, and I thank you for prompting me there. So in the event that we have a member on our platform who's in need of additional services, we will be working through Canopy to get that member connected. And of course, if there's imminent risk for somebody, we're going straight to the authorities to manage that directly. But yeah, it'll be very much a hand-in-hand arrangement.
Appreciate that. Looks like no questions in the chat just yet, so we'll kind of move on to the next piece here.
Yeah, so the next piece here, we're not going to dive deep into the data here, but I just want to give you a quick sense. I think people providing services, providing benefits to populations have a lot of times have questions about these digital services that are floating out there in the ether. Well, how do they do what they really do? How do we know that they're effective? Those kinds of things. Together All, as Nicole mentioned, has been around for a long time. We've had RCTs done on our services. There have been multiple research studies done over time that show our effectiveness. But this was a new approach that we took this past year to ask a very different question about the Together All digital peer support community. So we can go on to the next slide. And again, we can make this whole PDF available if folks are interested. So common sense would tell us all that peer support is the oldest form of support that exists. And there's tons of data that suggests that peer support's effective, but there's actually very limited information about why. There's lots of sort of theories and hypotheses. What we did was we partnered with a company called Listen, that is a really fascinating company. They are built to record counseling sessions, transcribe the counseling sessions, and then evaluate the transcripts of the counselor and essentially provide feedback to counselors on their quality, on their compliance with different models of treatment. So again, Listen was designed to evaluate counseling sessions. We are not a counseling platform, but we thought it made sense to take that structure and those tools and just apply them to our community and see what comes out. And so the key question we had going in is whether or not the community itself is therapeutic, just objectively speaking, and if it is, in what ways, and how might those qualities be similar or different to counseling, and how might different members in the community show up in different ways in the data. So we can go on to the next slide. That was basically what we set out to do. Is the community therapeutic? And if so, how? So we took this idea of an utterance, so 5.7 million utterances. It's essentially a complete thought or a sentence by about 50,000 members of the community. These are only comments made in response to a post. And we ran those through Listen's analytic engines focused on counseling. An important distinction we made here is that when Listen analyzes counseling sessions, they talk about therapeutic techniques. So you go to school and learn how to be a counselor, and then you employ techniques. In the community, we chose to label these as therapeutic ingredients because our peers are not deploying techniques, they're just being people, they're just helping each other. So it's a slight difference in language. What's really interesting is that the lead researcher at Listen said to me, this ingredient that we observed in the community, this interaction by a member, if it occurred in a counseling session, it would absolutely be coded as a technique. And it was really just validating to hear him say it in that way, because it just sort of underscores that people really can be therapeutic in the way they interact without training, if given the right space and the right tools. So we can go on to the next slide. This visualization is just intended to give you a sense of the findings. So we have Together All on the left, counseling on the right. Again, this is the Together All community comments. And we just located the ingredients based on where they are more or less common in terms of in Together All versus in traditional counseling. What we see in Together All is that peers give each other a lot of information. This is what I did. This is what I learned. This was my lived experience. Have you tried this? Have you tried that? I did this or I did that. In the middle there are all of these different therapeutic ingredients that are pretty similar in their prevalence in the Together All commentary community, comments in the community versus a counseling session. Active listening, giving advice, affirmations, simple reflections, open questions, those kinds of things. Pretty similar in terms of prevalence. And then over on the right side, you see the elements that are most common in a counseling session: structuring, facilitating a session, complex reflections, and closed questions. And so this just really highlights how the Together All community is therapeutically distinct from counseling, but also with tons of overlap. It's really important for me to say here, this in no way, and we are not trying to say this in any way, that Together All is the same as counseling. Absolutely not the case. We are not a treatment provider, but what we already know our services are effective, but this study was really to say, how are they therapeutic and how do people differ? I got one more slide on this, and then I'll release you from the data review here. So one of the most core elements of almost any form of counseling is called active listening. And in the case of Listen's analysis, they add up a whole bunch of different ingredients and label those as active listening. And this graph shows the percentage for each person, each type of user, the proportion of their comments that is active listening, is categorized as active listening. And so you can see our wall guides, members, and champions. Those are very, very active members. In the first three bars on the left, the average in the Together All community is about 10 to 11% of interactions are active listening or coded as active listening. The blue bar in the middle there, CMHC number 1, is a community mental health center. All of the counseling sessions by all of the clinicians in that counseling center added up, and they get a 15% active listening proportion across all utterances in counseling. This is, to my knowledge, the first time this comparison has ever been made. And so landing in the sort of 10 to 11% range on average in comparison to a community mental health center at 15 provides a benchmark. And to me, it makes sort of intuitive sense that in a peer support community, that you have actually that much active listening is kind of interesting. The last two bars on here are really, really interesting. So the orange bar is a community mental health center that underwent a year of training to improve their level of active listening. And so the blue bar to the orange bar says we can improve active listening in a treatment center if we train people. And the purple bar are our trained peers. So we have peers in the community who we put through our own training, and then they go in the community and they comment and support other members. And they came out at 25% of their utterances were coded as active listening. And so it really just shows that you can train people who are not licensed professionals to be extremely therapeutic in their interactions. And this is one of the examples of how we're actively creating a healthy, supportive, therapeutic community through training, but also that the community itself just inherently is therapeutic with some of the things that you would expect in other settings. So that was our study with Listen. To my knowledge, it's the first time anything like this has ever been done. And for me, I went into that study with a little bit holding my breath, like, what is this going to show? And we were really thrilled to see the results. And in general, what it means is you can send people into our community knowing that it's going to be therapeutic. It is a therapeutic space. And if there's distress or there's risk, that we have this team there that really takes this very seriously and is going to take care of those folks until they're connected, either through Canopy or through other services as needed. So I'm going to stop there. I think we've officially reached the end of our formal presentation. I'll hand it back to Anna.
I do really appreciate that. And, I think, like you said, it's really important to have that user experience. People report, I like using this, I enjoy using this is helpful, but then to have the empirical data backing it up of like, why is this working? How is this working? Is a really important piece. I think just around the integrity of the platform, kind of like where we started, with. So I appreciate that. So yes, I haven't seen any questions come in through the chat just yet, but I want to give folks a moment to do that. One thing, Nicole, when you were sharing the demo, that reminded me that I really liked about the Together All, or I not liked, like present tense, like about the Together All platform is, the diversity of ways that people can interact with the content. So maybe if you're not ready to post, maybe you're browsing what other people have posted about a particular experience, or maybe it's feeling therapeutic for you to give some input to somebody else on a particular topic that you've grown from or had experience with, in addition to posts. So there's kind of like 3 different ways you can interact with the platform, which I think is really appealing. The other thing that I learned somewhere along the line, and I repeat it often because I think it was helpful for me to learn, was not only can you flag content like you showed, to opt into certain communities and conversations, you also can do the same to make sure that you're not seeing particular content that may be triggering to you, or maybe is something that just doesn't feel like the right time right now to have, that kind of in your face, so to speak. So I really like the way that people can curate their own experience within the platform.
Yeah, that's really well put. And, one other piece I would just mention here is that Together All doesn't sort of funnel everybody into one kind of an experience, sort of like you're highlighting, Anna. There's so many different ways that we see people engage. And one very common one is to just read, and that's all you need. Yeah. Another one is sometimes to create a post and get a bunch of responses and realize, oh, I'm not alone here, and then create friends with those people that then you can have a direct message exchange with and an ongoing even group exchange with. And those activities are still monitored by my team and the technology to keep an eye out there. But there are many different ways that people can engage that sort of fit with their needs in the moment.
Thanks for adding that. I think one question, and this probably will be for you, Dr. Locke. So what does Canopy and Together All do to protect the privacy of members using the program? Because we're talking about like some clinical oversight, right? Which is really important. But then how do we also protect privacy of folks using the Together All platform?
Yeah, I'll offer a couple thoughts here, then Nicole may have some as well. I think one of the maybe the baseline piece is that the community is anonymous and that anonymity is enforced. It's one of the core house rules. And every minute of every day, one of my staff is actually monitoring the community for potential breaches to anonymity. And so whether that's in a direct message exchange or a post or a comment, we're immediately engaging there and making sure that that content remains anonymous on the platform. And so even the first layer of my clinical team engages with the community without any ability to see behind the scenes information about that member. So first layer support is also anonymous. It's only when it goes up through an escalation that we have the ability to break the glass, so to speak, and see identifying information and then get that person connected either to Canopy or to other services that they might need. And even there, when we're working with a person who's in a high level of distress or risk, we're absolutely not just push the button and send the police kind of thing. We're working with the member to understand their needs, to bring so that they feel a sense of agency in seeking support on their own or partnering with us to help them get the support that they want. And so if they're able to do that with us, then we won't break the glass and reach out to other services. We'll help them do that on their own. So we work really hard to make that a sort of an intentional and permissioned process as much as we can. So and then on my team as well, we abide by all of the standard ethics and expectations around private and confidential communication in the mental health system. And whether it's GDPR or HIPAA compliance or country-specific laws, all of those are followed. Nicole, other thoughts on your end?
Yeah,
Nicole,
no, I mean, no,
Okay.
yeah, I was just going to add that, as part of the registration process, people do, as part of that, they have to agree to our terms and conditions. And this is all outlined for them in layman's terms on kind of our duty of care and the ways in which we do protect individual privacy and anonymity.
Thank you for that. And I think, another question, kind of moving to the organization or the employer level. So, with EAP, with any kind of therapeutic intervention, peer support, I think confidentiality can be a concern, that people understandably have. What other barriers, do you anticipate when promoting a peer support program within an organization? Or maybe the flip side of that is, what are some successful ways to successfully encourage and promote use of the platform, like on an organization or an employer level?
Yeah, it's a great question. So I'd say, a real key to having a successful implementation and kind of ongoing program is really personalizing the peer support within the employer. So this can look like a variety of different ways depending on the employer, but often organizations have, larger ones have employee resource groups, parents of such and such a organization or LGBTQ plus folks of such organization, or even increasingly seeing mental health ERGs in and of themselves. But often organizations have some group of employees, wellness champions, mental health champions, who are really keen to promote kind of mental health and within their employee base. So really getting those folks on board as being advocates and kind of champions to help spread the word about this. And because we are, a community of the people, so to speak, this becomes something easily that wellness champions or ERG members can kind of get behind as being a support for their individual employees or the cohort of employees in which they belong to.
Yeah, that's great. And I think too, we talk a lot to employers around just integrating this component of your benefit, wherever people are finding benefit information. So that might be on your intranet, that may be on a wellness page. It's obviously available within the Canopy member site, Canopy promotional materials, marketing materials. There have been a couple of questions in the chat about, how to access promotional materials. So as kind of circling back to the housekeeping part of it, we will send some material out following the webinar today, but also working with your customer success manager at Canopy. We have a number of promotional pieces that we've worked with TogetherAll, the TogetherAll team around specific, community groups. So Nicole, when you were doing the demo, looking at different types of occupational groups, so like for educators, for example, we have specific promotional material for veterans, for some of the ERGs that you're talking about, in addition to more sort of, I guess you would call generic, information and overview materials. So if that's you, if you need marketing, promotion, and support, definitely your customer success manager at Canopy can help you with that. So we've exhausted our questions here. Looks like I don't see any more questions coming in. So I did just want to thank Dr. Locke and Nicole, of course, for your time today. I really appreciate you doing the deep dive about the partnership, between Canopy and TogetherAll, sharing the empirical research that was done by Listen, and just your continued partnership. And thank you, everybody, for attending and your time and attention. Really appreciate the conversation and the opportunity to share with you today. So again, there will be a feedback survey that comes out. Really appreciate any responses you can provide, about or input, how this was helpful or things you would like to see in the future, as well as some of the housekeeping we described with the resources and links and recordings and things like that. So thank you all. With that, appreciate your attention and time, and enjoy the rest of your day.